Without further ado, I would like to kindly invite on stage Mr. Naser Aldousari, President and CEO at Equate. And also Dr. Salim Huthaili, CEO at Alternative Energy, OQ. Welcome, gentlemen. I look forward to this session. I'm sure we're going to come out of it with plenty and thorough information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fatma. It's good to be here.
Thank you. So I would like to begin with a question directed to both of you. I'll start with you, Mr. Naser. Can you share with us 3 key leadership lessons you have been been taught during the crisis?
Well, first of all, good morning to everyone, and always a pleasure to be at the GPCA annual forum. It has been long coming. We've really looking forward to going back to some kind of normalcy and engaging with our fellow colleagues in the industry. To answer your questions, I think the key takeaways for me from a leadership point of view is, one, set your priorities right. Always that we always need to have our priorities in order. And when it comes to the kind of situation that you find yourself in, then you tackle each priority as it needs with the attention and the resources required. In the pandemic, at the early stage, our first priority was the well-being of our fellow workers, as well as the community at large. So with that in mind, we gave the precautionary measures the first priority. We made sure that ahead of any regulatory or health requirement, we started actually, and we were the first in Kuwait to start with measures like the temperature, like the distancing, wearing masks, and ensuring that that all our operations are safe and can continue.
You're already touching on my next question, actually, Mr. Naser, about how you protected your people through the crisis and what measures you took to do so.
I think to continue from the takeaways, the second one will address that exactly, and it's making sure that you have the right processes and the right responses to a different kind of a crisis or an emergency. Here we wanted to make sure that we prevent rather than deal with the consequences. So whether it's the symptoms, whether it's who is more vulnerable, how do we ensure that even if we have someone infected, how can we deal with that? How can we isolate that incident? But to do that, you need to be, the second takeaway for me from a leadership point of view is to communicate. There is no such thing as over-communicating in a crisis. If you don't fill the void, someone else will fill it. So you need to make sure that the organization is well informed on what is happening within the company and outside the company. And how are we planning to react and prevent any impact from such a situation to our organization. But we made sure, to your second question, that from a process point of view, we put in place policies and procedures to address a crisis that befitting for a pandemic. We established our pandemic crisis management team, and we delegated that authority to the company doctor and the pandemic team to ensure that we are protected and the well-being and the health of our staff are at the forefront of any activity that we do.
You mentioned on 2 important aspects, Mr. Naser, about protection and being protected and communication. How did you gain your employees' trust to make them feel comfortable enough to come and say, I need help, or, I'm safe enough, I will not lose my job, and can come to you and communicate with you?
Actually, from that point of view, I think we are fortunate to be in the industry that we're in. First, if you look at our track record in health, safety, and environment, we have an excellent track record, and that set us, at a high standard. So we're a highly disciplined, motivated organization. So what we needed to do is to tell everyone what is happening and what are the risks that are given, and looked at what are the tools that we need in order to ensure the safety of everyone. So our pandemic team have laid a weekly communication, and we've put all the information that are required on our site, internet site, as well as publish a weekly report to the organization. We talk to our staff directly. We've included the precautionary measures from a COVID standpoint into our personal protective equipment. So when you talk about the mask, the sanitizers, the distancing, the ensuring limited number of access of people to where absolutely needed, that all contributed to set the guidelines of how to manage and how to facilitate and ensure that the business continues, as well as protecting our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Naser. What about you, Dr. Salim? Any major lessons you came out of during the crisis?
Yeah, thank you, Fatma, and good morning to everyone. Yeah, I think the lessons are not too dissimilar, so I'll try not to duplicate. But definitely, the visibility of the leadership is really a key aspect of during a crisis and crisis management. We have proven now in hindsight that it's reflecting back, we were faced with very tough decisions, and we always step up to a challenge, and this actually goes into any type of aspect of the business, be it a technical solution, a commercial solution, or in this case, maybe a health safety side of things. So the visibility of the leadership is definitely something that needs to be a priority to everyone. The whole team and the whole staff look up to leadership to take decisions. And it's managing those decisions with limited information or lack of it, almost completely. So it is important that managing through uncertainty and taking the firm stance and priorities to go through these crises is very top priority for everyone. The second one is really, it's a continuous learning. So you need to glue your ear to everything, to hear the development, again, in order to gain enough information to take the next step. Again, in the priorities, for example, we even looked at very difficult topics that we couldn't actually inflict change very easily. But during the pandemic, when we are squeezed in a corner, we actually managed to change shifts in workplace to avoid that people contaminate and affect the whole business. Business continuity was also maybe a second priority after the people, as mentioned. But it is very important that we continue. We're running very difficult to operate assets with all the risks associated with it. And this is also a second area where we need this information. Conform to what's around you, but challenge from the right place. Yeah? Don't just challenge for the sake of challenge. Sometimes the decision is imposed on us. And again, leadership stands here because if you start leading and taking decisions, even the other authorities might look up to you because, again, of our experience in the energy space. We are really maybe at the best position to look at risk, evaluate, and mitigate. So these are two areas, and I would say the other area is, of course, adaptability. I think the shift to working remotely, and it's been mentioned, But I'm very proud in OQ, for example, we were even recognized by Microsoft and one of the top companies to shift into teams, from one day to another. Again, if you asked us, in 2019 that everyone will suddenly shift to work from home, people say you're crazy. It's impossible to do that. But it just happened overnight. So sometimes these pressures actually allow us to inflict change positively. And there are a lot of positive lessons. As you mentioned yesterday in the introduction, when a glass half empty, it means also a glass half full. So there are a lot of positive messages that we can take out of the COVID situation and the way we adapted to it.
True. And what about the measures you took to protect your people and their health and make them feel safe in the work environment?
So again, I might repeat myself a little bit, but visible leadership is definitely one thing. People look up to you and feel confident and comfortable. Of course, you are responsible as leaders to step up and ensure the safety of the people as a priority. A way we manage the asset to ensure business continuity, yet we change the shift works in the plants where people operate. Really looked at it from a risk-based approach. And so, how can we change the systems in order to adapt to the new realities that are facing us and the uncertainties that are going? Communicate and communicate and communicate, and I would say more than communicate, engage also. It's very easy to lose people when there is no feedback loop that's coming. So listen to the people's concern and see how you can actually, move. Stay agile and actually, push that message in the organization. And sometimes leaders is just about repeating yourself until all the messages are gone through. So we spent a lot of time focusing on the people, and then business continuity was second. We set up a team of emergency response team that did an excellent job, and the frontliners, we didn't mention that word today, but I think, in the previous conferences and seminars, the first thing we do is we thank them, and we still continue to thank them, be it at the workplace or at the health facilities or even at government decisions, a great place. And we're happy now in the region, the way we took our vaccination campaigns and everything. We feel comfortable and confident. Even now we hear about new variants and so on. We feel a little bit confident, and we should be careful because we saw how things can change very quickly. So I think we are aware, and we should always have this, sense of chronic unease, that things can change very quickly, and so we should be always ready to move forward. I think we are better today as companies as well. We focused, of course, also the squeeze on the economics. We focused also on the controllables, and I think we'll talk about this in the session a little bit, on what can you really control when it comes to cost and other things, to try to look at profit. We also heard yesterday that, from Dr. Ilham, for example, that, part of sustainability is profitability.
Sure.
So we needed to go through that. It was a very difficult position in 2020. And yet we emerged in 2021 very happy. And some of that is coming from decisions that was seeded and done in 2020 as well.
Very
when
nice.
we're
You mentioned,
going
Doctor,
through all of this.
And pardon me for interrupting, you mentioned how important it is and that you flipped overnight and used Teams. Let me take the conversation to Mr. Naser. How important is digital technology now after the crisis, everybody moved to digitalization. So how do you see this trend accelerating in the mid-long term?
It certainly got a lot of help during the pandemic. So if you look at our industry, we're a highly sophisticated industry. We've adapted a lot of technology over time. And if you asked me this question 2 years ago, I would have said that we are underutilizing the technology and the digital tools that we have at hand. So most of the tools that we've used in the early stages of the pandemic were things that were readily available within our system and readily available within our, immediate, let's say, reach. So having said that, this is only for the communication part of it.
Oh.
But then you get to areas where if I want to operate at a minimum staffing, or if I want to make sure that my business continues to optimize, whether it's in the cost cutting during drastic business interruptions, or whether it's to ensure that we have optimum operating conditions, then you will definitely need the more advanced tools that you need to invest in first on the capabilities of the people to use it, and as well as pursue these tools that I think that we've already seen a huge acceleration from the utilization part and from identifying what works best in the areas that we need to strengthen our organization.
Okay, great. Well, Dr. Salim, what changes to the operations and business models have you introduced or plan to introduce in the future to ensure business resilience against any future shocks? I mean, you mentioned that you have been very, good at, managing the crisis, and you said we have to be careful in the future.
Yes. So what we need to do is to continue to focus. Yeah? Don't lose your eye on the ball. Focus on what's important. Focus on the people, the health and safety, the top priorities. This always should be part of our scorecards in organizations. And again, we say it and we take it sometimes for granted because we've done it for so many years. We are lucky that we come from this field again. It's important that you automate some of the processes that can be automated, not just for the sake of automation, but also from a business continuity perspective, to test our systems when the time is easy for us to test these systems and to see and to run drills and so on. Again, just as we've done it on the risk side or on the health and safety aspects of things, but also on operations and so on. Focus on operation excellence. I think it's important that we focus on business continuity from the aspect of when we need to manage our inventories, we need to manage our operations, and link it again to the market, and continue to look for alternatives in the sense of forging relationship, partnership. I think globalization is a topic that needs to come back to the table even more and more with this, the relationship, especially with the difficulty sometimes in logistics or supply chain. A lot of bottlenecks were created there and ended up creating a backlog on our systems. So we need to find outlets as well in that sense, and again, dialogue with the wider industry to see how we can continue to supply the market and do more. And I think these were highlighted, and we see more and more discussions, partnerships are happening now to see how we can mitigate and go through these things together. No one entity could have gone through what happened in 2020 alone. And a lot of dialogue did happen, a lot of partnerships and we're happy. I mean, we're back together again. And it was very uneasy to do these things. And I hear in my discussion, our meetings, the need to do that and the need to optimize and to do more together.
And when you can't, you just fake it until you make it, right? Isn't that what everybody says?
Well, it's difficult in this industry to fake it at all, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Salim. Mr. Naser, the ongoing digital disruption has accelerated talent trends, and pandemic further brought about the adoption of disruptive technologies. Enabling safer, more remote work, creating greater demand for workers to fill jobs in these critical areas. This requires both creating a talent pool within our region as well as skilling those already employed with the industry. So how do you, Mr. Salim, see the talent landscape and the evolution of work in the mid-long term?
That's an excellent question. I mean, this goes, I think, beyond the pandemic and the 2 years experience. If you look at, the last 10 years, there was an acceleration of the need to do a lot of, digitization, big data, a lot of analytics that we had the platform for in the industry. So this is something that I think all of us have seen even before the pandemic. So the need to go more digital and to have access to a lot of innovative and creative ways. So if I take, for instance, Equate as an example, we've had quite a few patents in recent history, and some of them go to exactly to that point, you know, to how can we do maintenance, inspection on a robotics point of view? How can we have a more secure, you know, operational technology and yet have accessibility from within the network? So the idea of digitization was there. I think what kind of forced the acceleration of utilization, in my view, and we've seen it in many companies, led us to realize that our key staff need to spend more on analyzing and ensuring that we do a better and more efficient way in operation rather than just do the normal type of operation. And in order to get to that kind of the last 5% on that efficiency, you will definitely need digitization, a lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of advanced process controls that require both the skills and the tools that needs to sit on a platform that is solid. From a talent landscape, I think everyone will agree that the generation that are coming to work in the last few years are different from previous generation. The level of curiosity, the willingness to do more, the access and wealth of information that they have, something that we didn't have the privilege to have during our starting our careers. Earlier in the forum, I spoke to a forum of students for the youth and the leaders of tomorrow, and one of the aspects that we touched upon is that they have much more access to information and they can tap into a lot more wealth in terms of accelerating the learning curve than we ever had in previous years. So the talent is coming highly skilled. In our region, we've invested a lot on education, and we're seeing that come to fruition. We're seeing a lot of competition from younger graduates to get into the industry, which offers not only the possibilities of life-changing technologies and operation, but also offer a broad possibilities and opportunities to start on innovation, entrepreneurial ideas that can affect and add value to the society. So from a landscape, they're coming with a higher skill set than previously. So the training that we used to give to fresh graduate has to change. A lot of them are coming with passion to certain things in the industry. We've talked about ESG. We've talked about how we work on a global point of view. That needs to be taken into account from a skill set and from the development of the young generation. And to add to that, in the last 2 years, what has changed that it was not specific to the industry. And I agree with Hussein when Dr. Salim mentioned, none of us could have had weathered this crisis alone. The fact that everyone around us was going through the same thing made it possible that we all can collectively work together. So all of us had to work with government agencies. We had to go with port authorities. We had to work with customs. Everyone had to change their business model. And the most adaptive in that was the younger generation. They knew that it needs to be done, and they were more agile, more resilient, more flexible to get things done.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dr. Salim, OQ is spearheading various initiatives. Now, with that in place, what key technologies, processes have the regional industry adopted to enhance our carbon footprint and become more, energy efficient, contributing to key national targets?
Right. I think Thank you for the question. I mean, this is close to my heart as being in the alternative energy space now. But it's also, again, the parallel learning from one industry to another. Coming myself, I spent a lot of years in the petrochemical space, and today we're talking about, again, something very similar, and I call it the hydrochemical space, you know, derivatives of hydrogen and others. So there's a lot of parallels that can be drawn first between the current industries and, let's say, the future and the past as well. And what's important for us is that we continue to learn and to inflict, again, change and prioritize where we are going to spend our effort. Today, there is still a story to tell when it comes to the energy transition, from crude to gas economy, from gas to perhaps hydrogen economy, from gray to blue to green, hydrogen, and so on that is coming. So all of these things are going to be important for us to continue to focus on. I think, again, we need to employ and scale you know, the effort at the right position. The beauty of today is that everything, the whole economy is integrated, and everything touches on everything. You know, today we cannot look at just becoming a molecule push organization. We need to think about our market and look at things from a demand perspective and a molecule pull into, you know, demand pull into our production cycles. But also, again, you know, we cannot do this without logistics. So everything is now on the borderline between, you know, various industry, and you need to optimize between them and need to find partnerships and find ways to actually optimize and focus on this. In a way, you know, we used to, and it's, again, part of growing up and getting, you know, competitive. You know, the world continue. If you stand still, you know, your competition and everyone will take you for. So we cannot isolate ourselves. And the region has been, you know, a net energy exporter and a net product exporter. And I think we will continue to play that role. We are blessed today that we also have wind and solar at our backyards. So what we've done in OQ is try to employ these technology and marry them to our current systems, starting with decarbonization effort in our systems, looking at energy efficiency much more closely. The cost of energy maybe made us a little bit complacent in a sense on you know, on this aspect. But now, again, for us to squeeze that bottom of the barrel, we need to look at energy efficiency much closely. And this is a low-hanging fruit. We need to decarbonize our effort because, again, our markets are abroad, and markets will close if we don't actually adapt. Today, the agendas are not necessarily driven on a business-to-business level. The consumer have a lot of say. You know, we heard it when people were talking about single-use plastics, for example.
That's right.
Of
the
course,
consumer is smarter now.
Exactly. But also, COVID reversed some of these trends. Single-use plastic was really welcome and needed during the pandemic, for example. But what's important is that we continue to adapt and continue to listen. We've seen the case of Shell recently, you know, it's no longer Royal Dutch Shell. You know, the minority groups are actually coming and setting the agendas for boardrooms. And so we need to continue. You know, the new generation is mentioned. So our businesses are not necessarily run just in a boardroom anymore. And we no longer become, sometimes we need to behave as a business-to-consumer business rather than just a business-to-business. And need to listen closely to really what are the demands. How can we adapt? How can we build advocacy? So one area is for sure the energy transition, decarbonization, future energy. And let's see what can be done. Yeah? We are going to go to the next step and discover, and that's what we're doing in OQ. We are in feasibility studies, and our colleagues in the region as well. We announced a number of hydrogen projects that will help us set the tone for the future. And we are now going in the feasibility and discovery front-end phase of those projects. What that will tell us is take us to the next milestone where we are capable of taking a decision. And that decision can be positive and we move forward, or it can tell us this is not feasible, stop here and refocus. And again, this is, I think, the beauty is the theme of this conference as well, to redefine, reshape, and reinvent. Yeah? And that's exactly what we need to do in this new space. The biggest mistake is to stand still and do nothing at all. Because again, you know, and there's so much uncertainty. And again, drawing parallels to COVID, we managed to work through uncertainty. And this is so much uncertainty now. You know, this is between believer and disbeliever, this new area about energy and so on. So in OQ, to refocus the question, is really to focusing on energy efficiency and energy excellence, looking at our molecules and their integrations with electrons, and how can we bring the right electrons to the molecules. Again, you know, so looking at some renewable energy. Today, solar is cheaper than even gas, you know, in terms of electricity. So how much of that can we actually bring? And then free up the gas molecule and employ it for its chemical value rather than its heating value. And finally, the longer term game is looking at hydrogen, blue and green hydrogen, and the hydrochemicals that come thereafter, be it carriers like ammonia or even methanol or urea or whatever that comes in the future as well.
Very nice points you have brought up, Dr. Salim. Mr. Naser, I want to ask you about your period ever since you took over as CEO at Equate. What do you see as the most important area to invest in, particularly?
Well, it's definitely, you know, a time where you know, you come in a very uncertain time, a period of transition. At the beginning was a focus on the here and now, making sure that we can weather a very difficult period. If we remember, you know, last year in 2020, we thought it was a 2 weeks break and then we'll go back to work.
Yeah.
It's already 2 years running. So our focus actually in Equate is we've just finished our growth initiative in North America. Our glycol plant has been running almost the duration of the pandemic, 2 years, and doing very well in operation. And from a sustainability point of view, we're going 100% renewable energy to feed that plant. And in Kuwait, we are definitely looking at possibilities to improve the efficiency of our plants and debottleneck our activities. We're looking at future growth alternatives. You know, where do we grow? What is the right mode of growth that we need to adapt? Definitely the net zero carbon emission is a factor in that. And our commitment was always to be a partner of success in Equate. So we look at our partnership with every organization and stakeholders that we have. We'll continue to invest in our people. What we've seen in the last 2 years, that investment was the best investment we've had. It's definitely, if I look at all the functions within Equate, the way that they rose to the challenge and made sure that we emerge stronger. And even during the peak of the pandemic, we still delivered strong results in comparison. And going also on the alternative, how can we be more efficient in terms of sustainability? So on a larger sense, we're looking at, along with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, of how can we advance the cause of plastics further, but acknowledge also the waste issue and how we can solve that. We are definitely going through a lot of circular economy initiatives. We've already launched our Veridis 25, which is 30% recycled content of our PET business in Germany and in Europe. We also look at our diversity and inclusion. We've had a successful launch of our Elevate program, where we focus on unlocking the potential of our diverse group. As a global company, we wanted to make sure that we start with, in the Elevate program, focusing on unlocking the potential of the young professional female in Equate. We've launched careers for them in manufacturing and operation. We've also looked at how can we make the industry and our community more adaptive and providing opportunities for everyone with the right potential and with the right merits from a performance point of view. So this is basically our commitment. We continue to be, of course, focused in terms of being a highly reliable, safe operator of our assets as well.
Wonderful. So people are your focus.
Absolutely.
And strategies. Let me see your team members here, how happy they are to hear that. Absolutely, yes. So, Dr. Salim, let's retouch about what you mentioned of the theme of this conference to, reshape, redefine, reinvent. What is better way to be prepared for the future in those terms? What words of advice would you put for the industry to reshape, redefine, reinvent?
Right. I think the first thing is stay agile. I think sometimes we grow and we become very difficult to steer the ship. So I think continuing to know the sense of purpose, that why we exist in here, to know really your operation, how you continue to become sustainable in the sense of the profits, the people, and also the planet environment. I think these are important to continue, but that theme of agility, adaptability is very important. Let's remind ourselves of maybe stories. We are a net exporter of energy, as I mentioned, but there are economies based on, they used to be energy, sustainable themselves, self-sustained, but then they had to shift. Coal, for example, the disappearance of coal in Europe, in Germany. Today, Germany is importing its energy from outside, still the third biggest economy. North Rhine-Westphalia has maybe 500 plus chemical companies in one region in Germany. And today, it's all based on imported energy from the outside after the disappearance of coal. India and China, 60 to 80% of their energy is being imported. So let's not be afraid of change. I think that's the message there. We should continue to innovate. And again, the lesson from the pandemic: once we are cornered, we will find solution. Empower your people, to listen. We found hundreds of what we called quick wins. Areas of, and those came within the organization again through engagement, through empowerment of people to come up with areas, to work on them, and then to be recognized for the effort that they have put. Unlock the potential from the organization, from within the organization. I think also continue the effort to dialogue and to talk, to partnership. Very, very happy to say that Oman is opening its door and continues to open its door. We just signed a few MOUs also with our colleagues from Saudi, with Aramco, with SABIC, with Aqua Power, and Air Product as well in the renewable space. So, and of course, we have the relationship with Kuwait as well in Oman, in Duqm, through OQ8. Very happy with that these continue in the region, the partnerships in the region and beyond the region, because this is how we bring technologies, innovation, and so on. And we increase the size of the cake to continue to develop the economies, to provide meaningful jobs, and so on. And don't be afraid of change. I think we are all, we get afraid of change, but again, 2020 has been a reminder to us that it can bring a lot of positive and bring resilience and better future for us and the generations.
You're right, Dr. Salim. Everybody is afraid of change, and everybody is afraid of the unknown, the two things that COVID brought to us. What about you, Dr. Salim? What words of wisdom would you share with us regarding, how to reshape, re-identify, reinvent?
Well, I don't have actually much. I think we're very much aligned on this. The one thing that stands out for me, I mean, again, starting with the basic platforms to be successful in this, you need the scale, right? So whether we start on a new initiative or a different initiative, then we need to build the scale for it to be successful. And scaling up will come at a transition. And one of the things that we've learned from the pandemic, at least the 2 years, although that we have this huge scale of industry in the region, when it came to certain activities that relate to turnarounds or others, we had to do a lot of soul searching and talking to each other in terms of how can we face that during a pandemic. So this is one area that we need to focus on going into the future from a service industry point of view. But from a strategic and a long-term point of view, I think we've been blessed for a long period of time with having abundant resources that made transformed the region into one of the strongholds of economic influence in the world. We've invested a lot in our people and in our young generations to have the brightest and the best in the fields they work on, and I'm confident and ready to take any team from the region to go into a future challenge, whether it's transition in the energy sector or whether transforming and diversifying our economy. And we've seen this when we had to resolve issues that we thought were impossible 2 years ago. But when we had this kind of isolation because of lockdowns, etc., even on an individual basis, we've seen a lot of confidence from our workforce to weather these challenges. In the long term, it needs the collaboration of what we've heard earlier from like Rashid and other speakers. It needs the collaboration of all the entities, the regulators, the industry, the legislators, in order to set the priorities and set what are the areas that we need to work on.
There has to be some synchronization.
And like we've built a marvel in industrial clusters in the Gulf, we can build a knowledge-based economy going forward as well.
Thank you, Mr. Naser and Dr. Salim, for all the information you provided. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now be taking your questions through Slido. I hope you have submitted, and we are still receiving and accepting questions as we go. That was quite thorough panel and a discussion. I feel like we came out with a bundle of information.
Thank you, Fatima. And I think
Thank you, gentlemen.
Ready to receive questions.
Yes. All right. So I suppose you were quite clear and thorough with the information you provided. We have no questions for this panel. Great. Wonderful. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening and being with us. I believe we'll pause for a few pictures. Thank you. My pleasure is mine, Mr. Saleh. Thank you so much. Doctor, thank you so much.
Thank you.